Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this morning's webinar. So my name is Stephen Green, and I'm delighted to be joined today by my colleagues Paul Burns and Al Curran. Paul is our National Technical Director, and he's been working with technology the days of the ZX81. And for those real geeks amongst you, the RM380Z, which apparently his father used as a laptop. It's not the most portable device you've ever seen, but there you go. Thankfully, things are getting much better. So you can imagine how excited Paul is about what's now possible with technology, but he's also perfectly placed to understand the potential pitfalls. Paul also sits on the advisory councils for 4 major tech vendors, which entailed a recent trip to Microsoft in Seattle, which I'm sure was a struggle for him. I mentioned Al Curran is the brains behind TSG SystemCare, and it's a solution that has built bells and whistles on Kaseya's world-leading technology platform. And some of you may know, some of you may not, is the fact that he's one of very few to hold the position of Kaseya test pilot for that underlying technology. So there's really not an awful lot that Al doesn't know about this technology. Been working with it for a decade. He's developed all of the solutions that sit on top of the Kaseya platform to make TSG SystemCare the best possible solution that there is. So you can be assured that you're in safe hands with Al. Before I hand over to Paul, I just want to give you a backdrop to today's presentation and touch on TSG's approach. There's been a lot of emphasis recently on the idea of user experience, making life easy and ensuring that technology does what it should, which is to make our lives better. The key here is to deliver a seamless experience, something that can't be done with fragmented systems. So for anybody who's running an aging or outdated system, it's actually the case that technology is becoming a barrier. It's increasingly critical that everything works in harmony in order to the information to the right people at the right time. And more often than not now, that's not in the office, it's not on a PC, and it's not during office hours. So, you know, life is becoming more complicated. But even with a lot of this, a lot of consolidation and apparent simplification, at least for the user, there's no one-size-fits-all solution. We're in a transition period. 5 years ago, most solutions were still on-premise. Today, there's an increase in hybrid deployments, and in 5 to 10 years, it's likely that most of us will be working with at least some, if not the majority, of cloud-based solutions. There's clearly a drive to the cloud, but it has to be a considered move, and it has to be right for the way your teams work. Deploying joined-up solutions requires expertise across all areas, so that's information, communication, and technology, the solutions, the applications, the connectivity, and the infrastructure that underpins it. And that's why we've built end-to-end capabilities at TSG for the last 10 years. So, on that note, if you bear with me, I will pass across to Paul Burns, who will take you through the start of the presentation.
So good morning, everybody. I hope you can hear me clearly. We've got quite a lot to cover today, so I'm going to dive straight in. We're going to look at cloud, connectivity, unified comms, a little bit on big data, devices, and also security, one of my sort of favorite topics. And then towards the end of the presentation, after Al has covered SystemCare, I'm going to take us through some information on the up-and-coming new desktop platform, Windows 10. So hopefully everyone will find something interesting within the presentation. So let's start with cloud computing. So cloud computing, as described by the National Institute of Standards and Technology, is a model for enabling convenient on-demand network access to a shared pool of configurable computing resources. In simple terms, we just say it's just applications and servers hosted in off-site data centers. It's something that we've been doing probably in excess of 10 years now for various clients. So it's not something that's new. And when we say it's not new, let's just take a look at the roadmap of how we got to where we are today with the cloud technologies. So we can actually go back as far as 1997 and actually slightly earlier with something called the ASP model. And this is large application vendors like Sage Software creating online versions of their applications and publishing them. We had big challenges back in 1996 with bandwidth, and some of us still have those challenges today. And it's one of the reasons why the ASP model wasn't successful. we've rebranded that, or the IT industry has rebranded that to software as a service today. So actually this is a reinvention rather than something that's been created new. We look at things like Hotmail appearing in 1997 as the first multi-tenanted email platform, and by multi-tenanted we mean one platform shared by lots and lots of users, and that's still a technology that's used today by many of the vendors. In 1999 we saw Salesforce. Salesforce really pioneered the concept of delivering enterprise applications via a simple website, and they're still very, very strong in the marketplace today. We move forward to things like 2006, Amazon's EC2, what they called the Elastic Compute Cloud, which sounds fantastic, but effectively was the first idea of delivering server resources through cloud data centers that were shared by multiple users. Then we move forward to 2007 and Dropbox. Dropbox was designed really as a file sharing tool to deliver documents between multiple users, and found its way to the business sector as well. 2009, we see technologies like Google Apps and Microsoft BPOS, for those of you who might remember that, Google Apps being the more successful of those two launches. And then moving forward, we have Microsoft Azure in 2010 competing with Amazon's EC2 cloud. And then we kind of move forward in time, 2011, the launch of Office 365, and we've seen real traction in Office 365 within the last 18 months. And then 2013, Outlook.com. That was the rebranding of the original Hotmail.com product launched some 16 years earlier, multi-tenanted email platform. So let's have a quick look now at the marketplace size and the adoption rates. So first of all, the marketplace size, and the graph on the left-hand side shows the kind of adoption rate published back in 2013 by Gartner and how they saw the marketplace scaling, growing. So when you hear the marketplace is 150 billion US dollars, the reality is that the true cloud services part of the marketplace is far smaller. So if we take 2015 as an example, we have 83 billion there, shown in the bright blue at the bottom of the graph there. That's actually cloud advertising, something we've been doing for a long, long time. When we move to the next category up there, the business process services, business process as a service, around 43 billion US dollars there. And business process as a service sounds fantastic, but effectively it's just outsourcing. So this is outsourcing our HR, outsourcing a payroll. Again, things that businesses have been doing for years, but it's now been rebranded as a cloud service because we might be submitting the documents via a website. So when we take those off the numbers, we find the actual numbers are more like a third of the size. So when we see the size of the marketplace being stated, it's often a little bit leading. Having said all that, cloud adoption is definitely on the increase, and we're seeing probably now around a quarter of our customers consuming Office 365, and around 7,800 seats when I checked earlier this week already deployed across our customer sites, because it's a fantastic technology delivering real business value. So let's look at the pros and cons. I think a lot of people are aware of some of these pros and cons. So things like the scalability and agility of cloud is clearly a pro. So the ability to scale up and scale down resources as we need them. Things like the mobile workforce that Stephen mentioned earlier on. Business continuity, the fact that these are delivering a high level of SLA in most cases. The operational expense rather than capital expense that's attached to cloud computing, and also things like the ability to outsource some of the IT resource, or at least to retain that IT resource for better features within business. So things like developing applications, developing content, rather than actually keeping the lights on. And then we see things like the evergreen and sustainable nature of a lot of these large data centers, and the high security, i.e. the 27001. When we look at cons, think about things like interoperability problems, so problems between the applications and cloud services. Data sovereignty, things like where is my data going to be held? Is it held in the US? Is it held in Europe? Is it held in the UK? Things like compliance to fit within those legislation requirements. Things like our connectivity to the cloud may not be good enough, and we may need to upgrade it. The idea that they are near-fit solutions, they are not tailored and designed for individual businesses because they are multi-tenanted platforms. And of course, the legacy applications that most businesses have today, will they work with the new cloud services? And security also features on this side as well, because security is often seen as a con. The reality is a good, well-provisioned cloud service is as secure as an on-premise service, and that's the reality of systems today. So when we look at and about cloud services, we have a lot of different options: the public cloud, private cloud, and hybrid. So where we are today is most of the systems that are being deployed are around hybrid technologies. So we're delivering some on-premise applications, perhaps to support those legacy applications, and we're delivering some cloud services to support the business, perhaps off-site backup, mail filtering, Office 365. When we look at private cloud solutions, that would very much fit the type of thing we do for example, SystemCare, which I will talk about later. We have that very much in our own private cloud environment because that has to be secured away from all public systems. And then we have the public systems, so the likes of Office 365 and Amazon Web Services and Google Apps. And really the selection depends on a lot of different considerations and factors. There isn't a right when we walk in to see a customer because it depends on the applications they're running, the results they have in-house, things like their financial preference. Is it OPEX, CAPEX, a combination? Things like the locations of their users and also Office, perhaps their legacy applications they might be running, and also things like growth plans of the business, and also mobility concerns need to be considered. So there's a lot of things to consider when moving to the cloud. And then that moves us neatly into connectivity, because connectivity probably is the number one and probably the first thing to consider when we're talking to our customers about cloud considerations. We look at this simplified diagram here, and it shows in the bottom left performance versus SLA, our kind of entry-level products, ADSL, where we have no SLAs normally attached to those products. They're contended services, which means they're shared with multiple users. There is no usual minimum guarantee of performance of those links, and of course they are the up to 24 megabit services, but the reality is that it could be anything as we've seen them sub 1 meg services depending on location and distance from local exchange. Then we move up to the newer technologies like fiber to the cab. Again, we still don't have an SLA on those, but we have greater bandwidth available to us. And then we move into our synchronous connections where we start to get SLAs. So Ethernet first mile, next generation access, and Ethernet, which is what we sometimes hear referred to as leased line technologies. And as we move further up the tree, we obviously increase the expense, and we increase obviously the service levels and performance. Ethernet sort of topping the tree there with connections now. It says on the there 1 gig. There are some services being offered out there already at 10 gig, which obviously are hugely expensive, but there are now 10 gig internet services available. So moving on now to look at unified comms, which kind of fits nicely following on from connectivity. Unified comms is an interesting area, and it's an area that I haven't seen the growth that I would have expected to see. It's strange to me because we've been using it probably for the last 2 or 3 years now and seen huge benefits in using it within our own business, and have been describing those benefits and showing those benefits to customers. And I think customers now are starting to cotton on to that, and we're starting to get a lot more inquiries around Skype for Business. But a lot of people just see it as voice and video calls, and that's just one element of unified comms. If I bring in the next part of the slide there, we'll see the other elements that people are getting benefit from. So things like presence and instant messaging, so the ability to see that someone's available, to talk to them quickly, perhaps while we're on the call to a customer, and not to interrupt that call, or to actually drag them into the multi-party conferencing mode into that call very quickly without complicated phone system combinations, which I could never work out how to do. And then we've got things like the voice breakout capability, so breaking outside of our unified comms platform means things like where we're using a software application on our PC, the ability for us to then dial out to what we call the PSTN network and perhaps dial someone's mobile phone or dial a customer number. That means we could be using our UK-based phone system whilst perhaps connecting in from abroad, and obviously only paying local call charges while using the internet as the carrier for most of that voice traffic. And then we have the ability to share desktops and applications, which is hugely important for us as a user of this technology. We are regularly working across most of our offices on documents, and other important pieces of work where we all have to collaborate on those. And we might be based in, as far and wide as Aberdeen and Basingstoke, and we might have to work on those documents very quickly and in real time to get something turned around quickly for a customer. So the importance of the desktop and application sharing as well for us is huge. And then, of course, it integrates fully with Office applications, We have the ability to run whiteboarding sessions, and these technologies are available on any device. And when we say any device, we're talking it works on an iPad, an Android phone, a Windows phone, an Apple phone, and across the PC spectrum as well. So we've got a lot of choice about how we use these unified comms platforms and technologies. And really, it's just an extension of what we're already doing in our personal lives. So things like FaceTime, of course, from Apple and the Skype product before Microsoft acquired it, were things that we were using to communicate perhaps with family and friends. And the newer technologies, Skype for Business, which is the rebranding of the Link product, and things like our Mitel Unified Comms product, allows us to extend that into our business lives and to get real benefit. And really all about us working more effectively and improving our effectiveness within the business. It's not all about video conferencing. So let's talk a little bit now about big data. It really is one of the industry's favorite buzzwords at the moment. And when we talk about big data, really it's just a whole load of unstructured data coming from a variety of sources, both internal and external, and also social. It's fast, it's real time, and it is huge. So when we talk about Facebook there with 30 petabytes, to put petabytes into context, that is 1 million gigabytes. So it is a huge volume of data. And there are obviously for anybody who's really interested, there are terminologies of both petabytes, of exabytes, zettabytes, and yottabytes, and each of those times that number 1,000. So you can imagine as time goes on, that big data will increase and increase and increase. And why is it important to us? Well, we're starting to see people want to use big data to get real insight into things that are going on, and we'll kind of move on to that on the next slide and try and understand a little bit more about that. So how does it fit with business? So for me, the very first thing is, before we even start with the 4 steps that we see to the left-hand side, is we need to understand what we're trying to achieve. Is it market intelligence? Is it customer feedback? Is it the perception of the business within the marketplace that we're interested in? And then what we need to do is mine that data, and that involves us sort of collecting the data and interpreting the data in a format that we can use. We then move that into producing basic stats and informational analysis. Finally, we use interpretation, usually through charts and visualizations. And then obviously the final step is we use that to drive business decision making, and that's the final step. It isn't to make those business decisions for us, but it's to help inform the decision making, and that's how big data can actually be used to help develop and leverage businesses. And we are really doing a lot of work around that today. Next, we see devices. So when we talk about mobile, which Stephen touched on right at the beginning of the presentation, the increased working in the field now that we see within most of our customers, we can see how this is predicted to continue by Gartner, with a 400% increase in tablets and a 1,000% increase in ultra-mobile devices, a huge increase in the number of devices connected remotely. The point of this slide really, and I think this is kind of already known by most people, is that the PC environment is decreasing, and we see ultra-mobile and tablet devices hugely rising over the next few years, and will continue to do so. Mobile phones will slightly increase during that period as well, but that marketplace is already fairly saturated. When we talk about mobile devices, we really need to be aware of and concerned with the security around them, and that's to bring us into things like bring your own device and us seeing the increase in personal devices within the workplace. So let's have a quick look at security next. IT security, as we all know, is making the headlines on a daily basis. I mean, I could have updated this slide again today with the latest cyber attacks, because there's been a whole load more today, and globally we're seeing this across the whole industry, whether it's Sony Pictures being hacked, whether it's the US government being hacked again, whether it's breaches on specific smaller businesses which are hitting the press as well. I think that the key thing for me, and to make sure people understand, is that these attacks are not isolated to large multinational billion-dollar companies. They are hitting small businesses as well. So cyber attackers are trying to get, and this is all around. Now is all around big business. So these cyber criminals are taking money from businesses. That is why the industry is being hit so badly. This is no longer about people sat in their bedroom trying to bring down a website for a bit of fun. This is people trying to exploit people's systems to gain real cash from those businesses. So it's important that we understand where we need to protect our networks. So when we talk about protecting data and protecting our systems, for me the thing that sits right in the center of that is data. And wrapped around data is a whole load of things, different things that we use to share that data. So the first one on the top left is sharing. We can share things like Google and LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter and Dropbox. Then we talk about the cloud technologies that we might consume. Perhaps it's Hotmail, perhaps it's other cloud services like storage systems. The new one on the right is the Internet of Things, and this is a really interesting area where there's going to be a lot of press, and there already is starting to be a lot of press around how unsecure devices are. So people bringing in smart TVs from home into the business, plugging them into the network, and not realizing that that is a link onto their network, and that people can use that bridge to actually hack people's systems. We're already seeing it with things like portable hard drives that have wireless internet connectivity and again provide a route for hackers to gain access to systems. So these things are quite insecure at the moment because the industry hasn't cottoned on to just how important it is to secure them. Other things would involve things like wirelessly connected webcams and the like. And then at the bottom right we have transportation, so moving data around, whether that's via email, USB, whether it's across our wireless networks. It's important to understand that securing data when it's in transit is just as important. Then we have the traditional infrastructure. So we have things like our servers and our storage devices and our PCs and laptops that might sit on site. Then we have towards the left, bottom left, we have the devices themselves. So we have PCs now, we have ultra mobiles, the tablets we mentioned before, and things like mobile phones, all storing corporate data. And then, of course, our most challenging area, which is people. We know people don't always do things that we expect them to do and don't always follow the rules, and they are probably the most important area to address when we look at security in the whole. So let's look at the technologies that are available briefly on each of those areas. So when we talk about sharing, we talk about introducing things like policies, and when we talk about policies, those are controlled, centralized IT policies rather than a piece of paper someone signs. We have something called UTM, or Unified Threat Management, can help prevent people from doing things like storing data in unsecured and not agreed systems like Dropbox, for example, and of course encrypting the data when it is stored in those areas as well. When we move to the cloud areas, again we see encryption. We see things like mail protection, web content filtering. When we look at the Internet of Things, we can actually put these in something rather strangely called a demilitarized zone, but effectively it means moving them away from our live networks and our live systems so that they are secured in their little network. It means they can still communicate with the outside world and perhaps relay the information or get updates as necessary, but they're secured away from our live network systems. And we can also introduce something called policy-based networking, where if something does start to behave in a way that we're not expecting, we can isolate that particular port on the network, get that device down. Then we have transportation. So again, we have encryption being important. So if we're sending an email that has confidential information, let's encrypt it while it's in transit. We have things like rights management becoming important, so the ability to attach rights to a particular document, and something we call DLP, or data loss prevention. Coming into the infrastructure, we have the firewalls, obviously the traditional firewalls, group policies, access rights, and unified threat management all being quite important. Then moving across to devices, we have things like endpoint, mobile device management, so controlling those devices, locking them, being able to remote wipe them if they get lost, and things like encryption, again, being important for those devices, and two-factor authentication. And then right in the center is data. And again, we see encryption and access rights to that data being key things to be concerned about. And I could have probably added another 5 things to each of those lists about just how important security is. But for me, the one that you can see flowing through a number of those areas is encryption. That is the most obvious thing that people don't do today to protect themselves around losing important and security conscious data. So let's now sort of wrap that with SystemCare. And SystemCare for us is our flagship product, which Al's going to now take us through. So I'm just going to hand over to Al now.
Unmuted.
Thanks, Paul. Good morning, everybody. Hope you're enjoying it so far. And I'll try and keep the interest up for you. I'm here today to talk about SystemCare and exactly what it is. SystemCare is TSG's name for what's effectively an industry standard product called RMM, which is remote monitoring and management. As it says on screen, in simple terms, it's our way of monitoring our customers' hardware and fixing issues before they become an issue. We try exceptionally hard not to let things become a problem. We do get beaten sometimes, but what we do is we learn from our mistakes and we build that into the system. Over the years, we've found problems and we've added extra things in. We've got automatic remediation. We've got scripts that if they find an issue, will actually run something on your server or on your workstation to try and fix the problem. The other thing that SystemCare lets us do is it provides a secure level of access to all of our customers' systems so that the engineers can work on issues very, very securely. We've then got accountability and reportability, so we know who's accessing your systems and we know when they're actually in doing things. It basically lets us look after your IT whilst you look after your business. RMM, it's probably worth commenting, TSG have been one of the UK's leading and one of the UK's at the forefront of RMM products. We've been doing it for 10 years now, and we continue to innovate and push the boundaries of the service we're providing. There isn't a day goes by where we don't add something new. It might be something small, it might be something large. But it has to be said that not all RMM products are the same. We have a lot of people tell us that there are other suppliers can do the same thing. Perhaps they're using the same underlying product as us. When we go and investigate, quite often they're using these as remote access products. They're not using the remediation, they're not using the scripts in the background to do the things that we're actually doing here at TSG, and we believe we're out in the forefront. As Stephen pointed out, I'm a member of the Kaseya test pilot group, which basically means I get access to software before other people. Sometimes that software comes into the market, sometimes it doesn't make it. But if it's a good bit of software, I've got the ability to push and help get that into our system to benefit our customers long term. So where did we come from? As you may or may not know, TSG came from about 27 companies who all offered a different level of support. We had lots of very talented engineers who all did things slightly differently. We all got together and came up with in a room. We sat around the table and we came up with a solution that suited the vast majority of what our customers do. As Paul mentioned earlier on, our software for the last 10 years has been sitting in our internal cloud-based servers at Zen, at the co-location facility, which is excellent and provides us a very fast connection to the internet to allow us to service the 20,000 plus machines that we're actually looking after. We're constantly adding to the service, and we get suggestions made to us by internal engineers who, perhaps ask if we could install this bit of software or remove that bit of software. And we also get customers asking us for things as well. We work in tandem very well with IT departments, and these IT departments can also get a login to our SystemCare service where they can, use some of the tools that we've got. We've got two staff who are dedicated to the development, myself and another chap, and we literally spend all our time looking at how we can add to the service and how we can improve it. We work very closely with Kaseya themselves, and like I say, we're constantly pushing to make the system better for us and for all of our customers. Some of the things we've got and that we're using at the moment, we've got a feature called Live Connect. There's a couple of screens up on there. One of them shows me logged into a server and doing some DOS commands. This allows us to do things at the same time as the end user can be on the machine. In this instance, the machine was locked, but the end user could easily be sitting there performing a payroll run or typing up an important document or a quote or doing some invoicing whilst our engineers are working in the background. There are times that we need to actually have to jump on and actually take over the machine, but this gives us the ability to see what's going on. The other screen there shows me the processes on the machine, how well the network's running, how well the processor's running, and it lets us see at a glance without actually having to connect to the machine how well a computer's actually running. Like it says there, Live Connect minimises the disruption for users while engineers resolve issues. We want to get you back up and running so we can keep you happy and keep our engineers busy. We also do some very in-depth performance monitoring. This screen here shows the example of us monitoring a processor on a customer server. This one looks like it's running particularly well. The graphs are not particularly high, but should these graphs hit the threshold levels that we've set, it will start to send us emails. If we get those emails, we'll dial in and find out what's going wrong. Perhaps the backups overran, perhaps there's a problem with the SQL server, perhaps there's a problem with the Exchange server. We monitor these very, very closely. Over the years, we've added to them. We know the things we need to look for. For example, if Microsoft Exchange is stopping sending emails, we know the queues and we know the Windows performance monitoring tools that we need to apply to a machine. If you've got an Exchange server, we do that and we will get in touch should we see one of these problems. At the end of the day, what we're trying to do is maximise your uptime so that you're productive during the working day. We've also built a lot of our own dashboards. This one's here, it's a bit small on screen, but basically this shows us the a disk trending report for a customer and all their drives. The little section in the middle of it, just to the right of the middle there, shows me that during April, for some reason, they started using an awful lot of hard disk space. And if we look further to the right, we can see that some of those drives are actually starting to come very close to running out of space. What this lets us do over the long term is it lets us provide intelligence so that we can take that to our account managers and account directors, and they can come to you and say, look, by the looks of things, this server is going to run out of disk space by October. We maybe need to start putting something in the pipeline now to replace the server or look at increasing the capacity of the disk drive that may already be in there. We may need just to go in and delete some files off the server, which is what often happens. We've got a dedicated team of 13 guys on our SystemCare team. They don't act like a help desk where they're there to respond to your calls. They purely take calls out of our systems and call you up with an issue. You're running out of disk space, your server's offline, you've had a backup fail. These guys are kept extremely busy, and what our intention is to keep you customers up and running. Backup monitoring is incredibly important to us. It's probably the most important thing that you need to think about daily on your own system. And we've actually developed our own software to monitor people's backups. We used to be able to report whether the backup failed, was successful, or it was cancelled. Now we know if somebody didn't put the tape in. Now we know if it was just a couple of little files that didn't back up. Perhaps they're irrelevant files, but the backup may still report as a failure. What we're able to do now is look on our system very quickly and prioritise the calls that the engineers need to make to the customers. If we've got, and we do get it on a regular basis, customers forgetting to put tapes in the drive, we can ping them a little email over at the end of the day, just reminding them to make sure and change the tape and perhaps take the other ones off-site. And that works particularly well for us. Reporting. You obviously need to know what's going on your system. At the moment, we send our customers an executive report. That's the little report to the right-hand side with the small graphs there. We're currently developing the other reports there, which will let us see which machines have got antivirus software on them, which machines have got antivirus software that's up to date. Have we caught any problems with those machines? We're looking at all the security patches and the security problems with machines. This makes it very easy for us to see in one simple screen what's going on individual sites. We can schedule other reports in if, for example, you want information on who's using what machine or how long people are logging in at particular times of the day. We can send that on. We've got patch management reports, security reports, and again, we can tailor these and send them to you on the basis that you require to see them. Dashboards, we're currently looking at the latest release of the product that our underlying system sits on, and very shortly this is going to be released, and we're going to be using it right throughout TSG for all of our customers. This screen shows me one of the management dashboards that comes with the system. And this management dashboard here gives me an overall view of what's going on one particular site. Now there's a big red number 2 in there, and that's one of these things I need to go in and make sure I'm on top of it and make sure that these issues are corrected. All of the pie charts and things are clickable through. We can go through, and our individual engineers and the teams that they work in, whether it's the backup or the antivirus or the disk space team, they're going to be able to go in here and find the problem machines and work on them quickly. We've got other dashboards we've developed at TSG, but this makes it much more focused per customer, and we can see this very, very easily on screen. One of the new things that's also coming is what Kaseya tell us is the world's fastest remote control. Now, having used it myself internally here at TSG for the last 6 months or so, and our internal IT guys are also using it, it is wonderfully fast. We can now connect to customer systems within 1 or 2 seconds. Obviously, if we can connect in 1 or 2 seconds, we can fix problems, resolve issues, and get you back up and running much, much more quickly than previously we could. There's no reason for people to be sitting around twiddling their thumbs now. We can get in there, we can actually get it back up and running, and the engineer can get on with their next job. It is extremely fast, and I'm really looking forward to giving this to the rest of our engineers to use them. Another thing that we're going to be doing is agentless monitoring using industry tools like SNMP and Nmap. What we're going to be able to do with that is monitor devices like SANS, the picture at the top there, Sophos UTMs in the middle, or Mitel phone systems. These devices have got operating systems on them, but they're not. They're very proprietary. They're locked down by Sophos or Mitel or HP. SNMP lets us communicate with these devices, and it will tell us should any of these devices have a problem at any time. We're working on that, and we're about to roll that out to a few of our customers on a test basis. Paul mentioned earlier on the growth in mobile devices, whether it's tablet computing, handheld devices, mobile phones, etc. Who's going to monitor these? Well, it's something that we're going to start looking at offering as well. They're very important. They need to be kept up to date. They need to be security, locked down so people can't steal them. If they go missing, we need to be able to track them. This is something that we're starting to look at. Looking at the growth predictions, we're going to have to start buying some more licenses at this end to keep up with these things, I guess. And I know all my colleagues in here seem to have 2 or 3 devices, so I'm sure it's the same in your working place as well. Office 365, Paul mentioned again earlier, we've got 7,000 or 8,000 endpoints using this just now. At first, it wasn't particularly easy to monitor these. But with solutions we are currently looking at, we're able to go in and actually see how big people's mailboxes are. Are there mailboxes on there that we don't need to see? The background of the Office 365, it was all based on using PowerShell scripts to find this information out. We've now got web-based features here that we can go in and we can see who's got the largest mailbox. And I don't know if you can quite make that out, but it is our National Technical Director here, Mr. Burns, who is using up most of our bandwidth and most of our storage space on our Office 365 here. But it's good to see him actually, using the tools that he shouts about every day. So that's probably a very good thing. So to sum up, our ongoing development of SystemCare matches the constantly changing landscape of the IT industry. Whether customers have an in-house server or they've got cloud-based systems or a hybrid setup, we're going to be able to monitor and make sure that these systems are running at their very best potential. it's an ongoing thing. It changes on a day-by-day basis, but that's what keeps this job particularly interesting and keeps us very, very busy. And with that, I will hand back over to Paul.
Muted.
Thanks, Al. That was really interesting, and I hope everyone else found that interesting as well. Particularly looking at the future technologies coming around the monitoring of hardware devices directly, and also the mobility piece and things like the 365. So showing the continual innovation that we're putting in after 10 years of development already on the Kaseya platform. So hopefully you all found that really interesting, as I did. And thanks for pointing out that I've got the largest mailbox as well, Al. So moving to Windows 10, I'm going to do a very, very quick introduction to Windows 10. If anybody is interested in looking at this in more depth, I'm more than happy to kind of pick that up, you know, or go through your account manager, and I'm sure they'll be able to provide you with more information. We are going to be sending out information as well on Windows 10 during July, so that people can get an idea of what it means and how they can upgrade, and what does the free upgrade really mean. So let's dive straight in. So when is it being released? I think you'd have had to have your head buried in the sand not to know now that it's going to be released on the 29th of July. Windows 10 is being described by Microsoft as the last operating system, a bit like the Apple operating system at the moment. Yes, there are updates to the Apple operating system, but it is really, in all intents and purposes, one operating system then just gets major upgrades, and that's very much the model that Microsoft are moving to. We know that for people running the Pro and Home versions of Windows 7 and 8, they will be offered the upgrade Windows 10 free of charge for 12 months only. After that 12 months period, it's unclear as Microsoft will decide to do, but it is likely to be one of two things. Either it will be that Windows 10 will become chargeable on a service basis, or a one-off purchase, and those look like the two models that they're exploring at the moment. What that effectively means is if you just decide not to upgrade your Windows 7 or 8 PCs during the next sort of 12 months, if you then decided you like the look of the new operating system, then you would have to pay for that operating system download. So there is a window where you will get this free of charge, and of course during the next 12 months we will start to see Windows 10 devices appearing through the normal the retailer routes and also through the business routes. So Microsoft really, this is part of their transformation to become a devices and services business. And this they also describe quite regularly in the articles as Windows as a service, and no one really understands exactly what that means yet, but that's how it's been described, and we think it's this last version of the operating system that they're talking about. So let's take a look at why it's important. Why is the launch of Windows 10 important to the marketplace? Well, Windows 8 was a kind of love or hate operating system, and I think it would be fair to say that the first launch of Windows 8 didn't go down particularly well. 8.1 revised a lot of the problems, fixed a lot of the issues, and was actually a very, very well-liked operating system by those people that went straight on to 8.1. When we look at our marketplace and who's using what technologies today, we see a very similar picture to this. So a lot of people still using Windows 7, some people using XP. In fact, our data shows that we're at sort of under 8% now. Our install base, because of the campaigns we've run, are still running XP machines, which obviously are at security now. But obviously you see the majority still on Windows 7 because they've not adopted 8.1, and that's because I think the leap Microsoft tried to take was too great. It's important to the marketplace generally because at the moment, if we look at the consumer and business marketplace, Microsoft has over 91% of the PC share, so they are huge in this space, way ahead of all of the competitors, which you can also see listed down there. What are they bringing to us? So the first thing is one store across all devices. So this is one application store. You're using a mobile phone, a small form factor tablet device, a larger form factor tablet device like the Surface Pro, right through the standard PC operating systems, laptops, and up to a product that they call the Surface Hub, which is a huge touchscreen technology device which allows video conferencing, is intelligent, so it recognizes you facially when you walk up to it, and all sorts of other really cool technologies built into that as well. It's a friendly operating system as well, so when you detach the keyboard, it automatically turns into a format which is more suitable to a tablet operating system. When you attach the keyboard, it turns more like a laptop device. So this is bringing this idea of a true transformer technology to the marketplace. So one product family, one platform, one store is how Microsoft is seeing it. So when you install an app on your work PC, it will automatically install that application on your other device because it assumes you will want to use it on those devices also, and your data will be portable between all the devices too. The interface is great. I've been using it since September, and there's been a lot of changes during that time. And I've just put one example of things I think is a real useful tool. If you're using a larger monitor and you tile regularly a couple of applications side by side, the intelligent tiling now shows you all of the other windows that you've got open, which you can see on the right-hand side of the screen there. On the left, I have a simple Word document, and it knows that I probably want to put something in the space on the right, so it gives me the choice with just one quick click, rather than the process I had before, which was grabbing the other window and dragging it into the right place. So it's little things like that which make this intelligent interface much, much more usable than the previous Windows 8 experience. We can also choose how large or how small the start menu is, and the start menu is back in a true format rather than the sort of 8.1 format that was introduced with the feedback. They've also brought in a new web browser called Edge, which is a cut-down version of Internet Explorer. Effectively, they've cut all of the bulk out of Internet Explorer, and it's very fast and very slick, and it works really well for general web browsing. HoloLens is a really interesting one. This, for me, is probably going to see most of its within the gaming environment, but there are specific industries that will benefit from this, particularly around product design, construction, and kind of those sort of areas predominantly. In the example we can see here, a girl in the chair sat designing some fairings for a motorbike. The model sat on her desk is actually not there. Obviously, it's a 3D model that has been projected by the HoloLens headset into the real-world environment. So this idea that you get to see things in the real-world environment, rescale the fairings on the bike, change the colors and see what it might look like in reality is a really interesting and innovative technology. There are some great videos on about HoloLens and just what it will mean to people and home users and business. You know, the ability to draw a huge screen on your wall and watch a movie on it. This thing is all possible with HoloLens. The HoloLens headsets are likely to be later in the year when they're released. We won't see those on the 29th of July, unfortunately. Then we come on to one of my favorites, which is Cortana. Cortana is an incredibly intelligent digital personal assistant. So, an example, I got a little flash up on my phone recently when I was down at the Greggs sandwich shop in Leeds outside our office, saying I needed to leave Greggs because I had an appointment back in the office in 14 minutes' time, and I was with the currently I was 14 minutes away. It showed me a map, and it did that without me asking it to do it. So Cortana looked in my diary, found a postcode, said I wasn't at that postcode based on my location, and then flashed up a map for me and told me I needed to leave now and showed me the route, and I was 14 minutes away. But looking at that in the terms of a real business use, we're seeing things like APIs being developed for Cortana so that we can do like perhaps track our expenses. So in the car, we say start expense tracking, we finish our journey, click end expense tracking, and it knows where we've traveled from and to, and that can be transmitted straight into a system. But also things like I'm about to visit a customer and flashing up all the information about that customer on my mobile phone, so the last transactions perhaps from our CRM system. So Cortana really does give us the ability to start to think about working in a completely different way, and the intelligence that's built into Cortana can be leveraged in lots of other areas. So a fantastic product to look at as well. That's already on the phone devices from Windows 8, but it's now ported onto the desktop devices as well. So where are we heading ultimately with this kind of the new operating system, the cloud, and the new way of working? Well, for me, in the sort of the distant future, maybe the next 5 to 10 years or middle distant future, I see us with the users really consuming devices and applications. That's what they will want. They'll pick up a device and they'll want to consume lots of different applications on that device. They'll have connectivity via a variety of different means. There will still be some connectivity, but the bulk will be mobile, secure, delivered via Wi-Fi, and also we'll have technologies of unified comms running across that. And most of the services will gradually be starting to migrate out to the cloud. So we'll consume our data our services, maybe our payroll application, our account system, our finance system, production system, through the cloud technologies. Our compute resource, storage, backup, DR, and security will all be wrapped into those technologies as well. And our user experience will be central to that, and it'll be driven by what we expect of the consumer applications that we use today in that space. So in conclusion, I would say we think about and embrace and encourage new ways of working. So when people want to work at home and it's difficult, let's look at how that could work, because we do that today with a number of our employees, and it's been hugely successful. We need to also evaluate and mitigate security risks, but let's not go overboard. You know, if something really isn't a security risk and it is a 1 in a 10 million chance of anything ever happening in that space, let's not worry about mitigating that risk, but let's look at the real risks to the business. Data, how data's flowed, how it's consumed, how people are storing that data within the business. And finally, we believe that you should have a support service that delivers real business value. And hopefully I'll show you today that we've got a fantastic technology that we believe is streets ahead of competition. So really, finally, as the message, be ready to adopt technology that will benefit your own businesses. I'm going to hand back now to Stephen. He's going to finish off the webinar, and we'll open up to questions.
Thanks very much, Paul. I think that's a fairly whistle summary of where technology is going, and you know it's going at an incredible pace. We've got a lot more resources, a lot of information. We've got a bunch of infographics, videos on these new technologies on our website. So please go and look. Please hunt around. If you can't find something, then speak to one of our account managers. If you want to see something more, if you want a demonstration, then again contact your account manager. We'll be adding more information about Windows 10 over the coming weeks, just so that we get as much as you need without necessarily overburdening. Again, there's some great video presentations. There's some very exciting things coming up. One thing that is worth having a look at, and I couldn't tell you exactly what is on the website at the moment, but we'll make it as obvious as possible, is Microsoft's future of productivity videos. There's a new one just out, but actually if you roll back to the one that was released in 2012, it's interesting to see how the technologies are actually through, and a lot of what's actually happened in the 2012 video is now commonplace nowadays. And again, you can see how that's going to move forward with the current video into the coming years. We'd also ask you to complete the feedback response, which will come onto your screen during the webinar. And if you have got any questions, then please fire them through. We've got a couple that we're going to start with, so we'll move on to that now. I can see some questions coming through. While I'm checking out the questions, I'll just pull forward, and we'll get the first ones underway, and I'll hand over, I think it's to Al for this first one. So the first question is, what reports are available specifically around software on SystemCare? So if I can just open your microphone up, Al, and hand that one over to you.
Unmuted.
It's Stephen. Yeah, software reports, we've got a huge variety of them. We can start off by giving you a list of all the software that's installed on all machines. Unfortunately, that report runs to usually 2,000 or 3,000 pages, so not too handy for most people. But we can break that down. We can look at individual applications. We can look at Microsoft Office applications to see what people have got on their machines. A very popular report that is run by our account managers and account directors is a report that basically shows us any software that really shouldn't be on the corporate network. Things like BitTorrent and Kazaa and any of these kind of bits of software that allow people to download things that perhaps they shouldn't from the internet. We run that, and we often surprise customers when we show them that it's installed on a few of their staff members' machines. You know, beyond that, we can provide other licensing reports. We can just give you a list of what software's installed on a machine, and you know, just what's in people's add remove programs. Again, that can be a bit eye-opening when people aren't sure, you know, and that, you know, their staff have the ability to install things themselves.
Muted.
Brilliant, thanks, Al. And presumably that also, well, you mentioned the things like BitTorrent, so it covers anything that might potentially cause a that the company doesn't realise is actually installed on the on the system, and anything that's dangerous. Al's nodding his head, so I'll open his microphone back up in a second. If we keep the microphones on, then you can get all sorts of feedback going on. We've got another question on SystemCare, which I'm going to throw out. Which is, can SystemCare manage encryption on individual computers? So,
Unmuted.
On its own, no, SystemCare can't, but we do have a Sophos product that we can talk to you about in this instance, and that works fantastically well. We've rolled it out at quite a few of our larger sites recently. Where we have actually used SystemCare with the rollout is I helped one of our consultants recently with a project where we were doing it at a customer's who's got about half a dozen sites. Now, we would have had to send engineers out to all these individual sites, but what we did was we used SystemCare to roll the software out, to install the software, and it just meant that the consultant had to pick up the odd machine that wasn't in the office, laptop, road warriors that, weren't there. But, on its own, SystemCare can't do it, but we can certainly talk to you and help you out with that kind of solution.
Muted.
thanks, Al. That's great. Something that a couple of people have asked relates to Windows 10, and actually I know that on my own home, Microsoft have thrown up on the bottom a little button inviting me to download Windows 10 already. Now it's still over a month away. That doesn't appear on my work computer. Paul, can we have a look at how businesses should look at tackling the migration to Windows 10?
Yes, Stephen, thanks. This is a really important question. We've been talking to a number of customers. Some of our larger clients, things like services from us, are already going to be some pilot sites to test some of their machines to see whether they're capable of running Windows 10 platform. It's an important thing. Microsoft is saying that Windows 10 will be compatible with all device drivers from Windows 7, Windows 8 machines, and all applications that are supported on Windows 7 and Windows 8 machines, and they're confidently back that statement. The reality, of course, that we know is there are millions of device drivers out there, and there are, probably hundreds of thousands of applications and combinations of applications and device drivers. So it has to be done in a considered manner. I think what we'd recommend for clients is that we'd be deploying a small pilot to a group of machines, whether that's tackled by perhaps their IT team, whether we help to deploy those small group of users. We'll let them get a feel for the operating system, but more importantly, the applications, the print drivers, and everything else is supported and run successfully. Assuming the pilot is tested and is signed off successfully, we then into a larger rollout phase. So that will be our advice in terms of that. In terms of SystemCare, we'll automatically be blocking the automated downloads. Now, there's a reason for that. What we don't want to happen is for thousands of our users, and at the moment we've got, I think, over 25,000 endpoints into us, all suddenly download Windows 10, us finding a whole lot of issues with people's machines not working properly, and causing sort of chaos across customer sites. So we took the view we'll block them by obviously, if people want to install it, there's no issue at all. We would unlock that. What I would say, though, is from my own experience of Windows 10 is that this needs to be done in a controlled manner, and probably needs to be done by someone who knows what to do, make sure that everything is properly tested and the device drivers are all working, but most importantly, the business applications are working properly.
We've got another question coming on Windows 10, which is, can you tell me how much after Windows 10 after 12 months?
Thanks, Stephen. I'd love to be able to answer that one. Having been with Microsoft very recently, talking about Windows 10, this was kind of a hot topic, how they were going to be billing it. But there is no idea yet about the amount they're going to charge, and so how they're going to charge it, whether it's monthly or whether it be a one. We don't have an answer, unfortunately, yet.
Okay. Well, yes. As soon as Microsoft decide we need to know that, then I'm sure we'll to answer that question. Who knows exactly when that's going to be? We've got one question, unless there's any more that come in the next couple of minutes, and that is again for Al, which is what services are monitored. So does System monitor things like Exchange and SQL?
Unmuted.
Yeah, good question, Stephen. The main services we monitor are the kind of basic Windows ones. We check that, for example, the print spooler's working. We check that file and sharing is working because people need to be able to access documents on servers. We check that Microsoft Exchange is up and running. We also watch some of the message queues to check the emails are going in and the emails are coming out the way. A lot of people tend not to notice this until it's been sitting in that state for a little while. If we get problems with that, we'll ping a message over to one of the guys that monitors our mailboxes, and he'll jump on and have a little look. Again, we've got auto remediation. If Exchange just suddenly stops working, we'll actually kick it back into life. And if it doesn't do that within 3 attempts, we'll actually go on and investigate. We monitor SQL as well. We look at how well SQL databases are performing, if the servers are being overrun. And again, sometimes that may involve just a restart of the server. Sometimes it may involve a conversation where the hardware just isn't coping with the demands that have been placed on it. But any of the services that are available on Windows, we have that ability to monitor it. We try to make it the same across the board for everybody, but we have the ability to bespoke it a bit for individual customers.
There's another question here on SystemCare, Al. Another question here on SystemCare, Al. Is there an over SystemCare desktop?
The honest answer to that is no. It's a very small client. It sits in the system tray on your machine. The only time that anybody tends to notice a little bit of disruption with it is when we're doing some of the patch management. Microsoft released their patches on a Patch Tuesday, and what we do is we analyze whether we're going to allow these patches out. As an example, we tend not to push out SharePoint patches because it breaks SharePoint servers. We pass that over to our SharePoint team to have a look at it. But occasionally, particularly with older machines in this day and age, we do see a bit of an issue with, when patches are being pushed out. But 99% of the time when the agent's running on your machine, you won't notice anything. I run a lot of tests on my machines, and I struggle to see any impact on the device at all.
Muted.
Great, thanks, Al. Back to Windows 10. Where are we? Sorry, there's another question. I'll run back to this one. If you opt for a free download of Windows 10, is there a charge after 2 months, or is it free forever?
Thanks, Stephen. And there's some great questions coming in, and this is another really good one. This one, thankfully, I can answer. Microsoft have said that if you deploy Windows 10 within the first 12 months onto hardware, Windows 7, Windows 8 Pro or Home, that it will be free for the lifetime of the device. So there will be no charge, either a service charge or an upgrade charge from that point onwards. So in other words, you will automatically be entitled to every upgrade after that Windows 10 initial release that comes out, and you will never pay for those upgrades for the lifetime of the device.
And again, just picking up on this one, if you move to Windows 10 and find you either don't like or can't afford the changes, the charge once decided, can you move back to Windows 7?
Another really great question there. In terms of downgrading, anybody that buys a Windows 10 device, first of all, will be entitled to downgrade to Windows 8 or Windows 7 Pro. It's unusual for Microsoft to take allowing downgrade to 2 versions, but they are going to allow the downgrade to 2 versions. In terms of if you don't like it, to change it back to Windows 8 or a Windows 7 machine, then yes, there are steps that need to be done to return the machine to its original state, and there would be a charge from the point of view of the services required to take that back to that initial state. But in terms of a license cost, as we know, Windows 10, if you install it initially, will be free for the lifetime of that device.
Okay, we're getting a little flurry of questions on Windows 10. Okay, we're getting a little flurry of busy. We're keeping it busy. Will we be able to download? Will we be able to download Windows 10 from the volume license portal? If we upgrade to Windows 10 and the machine hard drive crashes, how would we go reinstalling? Would we have to run to install Windows 7 and then run through the upgrade process again? Will BitLocker be part of Windows 10? I will throw those. Good luck.
Thanks, Stephen. You'll be busy today, which is so. First of all, BitLocker. That's a nice one. Yes, BitLocker is part of Windows 10. It's free with the operating system. Microsoft are encouraging people to encrypt their hard drives, and hence why it is included. It is actually also included. It should be noted with Windows 8. Professional as well, so people who've been using Windows 8 or 8.1 will already be used to the fact that BitLocker is included with the operating system. In terms of the other questions, will it be available to download through the volume license portal? Yes, if you have purchased the software, you've purchased the desktop operating system suite, I would say almost certainly. Is it going to be available through the license portal generally for people who haven't purchased it through that method? I would say it's probably unlikely, but you can download it directly from Microsoft. There are some clever download tools which Microsoft aren't making generally well known, but we're kind of aware of, which allow us to download the software once to a single machine and effectively do a peer installation across other machines within the network, so simplifying the install process. And I'm just trying to remember what the last question was. The reinstall, if you upgrade and then the machine crashes, how do we go about reinstalling? We have to reinstall Windows 7 and do the upgrade process again. There is, when Windows 10 installs, there are different ways that it can be installed. So you can either do what's called an in-place upgrade, which will basically take all the current configuration and settings and then we'll pull them through into Windows 10. That is Microsoft's preferred method of installation. It maintains all of your current existing settings. My word of caution with in-place upgrades is that it will pull through any problems that you currently have from Windows 7 and 8 into Windows 10. So if the machine is not in a clean and a good running state, advise that method, and we would advise a complete reinstall. If, however, the machine is in a good state and it's working well, then an in-place upgrade would be perfectly acceptable, and then you can do a downgrade back to the previous operating system simply. So the answer to the question is it all depends on how the upgrade is performed. If it's a clean wipe and reinstall, then unfortunately it will be a clean wipe back to Windows 7, and it would be a fairly lengthy process. So in terms of time, depending on the number of applications and the speed of the machine, you could be looking at anything from a couple of hours to half a day to reinstall the operating system.
Thanks, Paul. That was excellent. Well done. At the minute, there aren't any more questions coming in, so I think hopefully we've exhausted all of your questions so far. If you have any more questions, then obviously please do feel free to get in touch with either your account manager or anyone else at TSG feel would be able to answer your questions. I'm going to pop this slide on. There is a response form that you will be encouraged to fill in when we finish. So hopefully we have enlightened you and answered as best we can the questions. Finally, I'd encourage you, if you are interested in new technologies and what's coming to the market, to follow the blog, which you can access on www.tsg.com. We've got a whole host of bloggers across the organisation who are, they're all techies, they all love technology, all looking for new things, and they're sharing their thoughts on where the future lies and how that will impact on the way businesses work and operate. So the blog's a great way to go up. It also fire you into other content on tsg.com that will hopefully be valuable for you. And finally, I'd like to thank Paul, Al, for the fantastic contributions today. Thank you all for joining us, and hopefully we'll be entertaining you and enlightening you again sometime in the near future. Many thanks for joining us, and cheerio for now.